Before we get started this morning, I want to not acknowledge the loss of three longtime callers to the show. Callers are, of course, a big part of our program, and it wouldn't be the same without them. Regular callers have become part of the show. Well, we lost three of them over the last couple of weeks. Michael from Cape Breton, Tony from East Lawrencetown, and, of course, Bill Mott. I have fond memories of all these gentlemen who were not afraid to share their opinions on the program and keep Rick and Todd and me on our toes. So in honor of these stalwarts of talk radio, we'll dedicate today's show to the memories of Tony and Michael and Bill. Our thoughts are truly with their families today. May they rest in peace. Well, hello and welcome to the Monday edition of the Todd Dino Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day. A lovely November day out there, sunshine, but boy, was it chilly this morning. I had to scrape the windows. I think that's the first time that I've had to scrape the windows of the vehicle before coming into work. Maybe a little bit on one corner before, but this one was a full-on workout this morning to get the ice off, and I saw a lot of people in my neighborhood doing the very same thing. You know, that's like the first time you get to scrape you know where your scraper is, and you got to do all that stuff. Anyway, a little frost on the pumpkin, as they say this morning. And it looks like we're going to have a bit of a wet week coming up. It looks like today is a bit of out of the norm, but I can tell you, having a walk around Belcher's Marsh and Clayton Park on the weekend, been following that the water levels on that park for the entire summer, and it's been extremely low, as you know, no doubt know. But it's amazing how quick Mother Nature gets together and gets her stuff in order when she gets the resources that she needs. The water levels came up. They're not anywhere where they should be, but at least the pond isn't a mud bog anymore. And that would bode well, I would assume, for those that, of course, are still on Lake Major and dealing with that, and those of you who are dealing with dry wells or drying up wells. I read or saw a couple of stories on the weekend about people who have gone to the point where they have they may have had a dug well, and they've gone through the expense and the bother of getting a drilled well so that they don't have to deal with this before. Some of those dug wells are over 100 years old and have never had a problem before. And now it's become a problem. So we will, of course, keep our eye on the forecast as we move forward. And, of course, I can't start the show without talking about the Blue Jays. We've been talking about them for months, it seems. And it was a emotional roller coaster, I think, is probably the way to describe Game 6 and Game 7. The Blue Jays, I don't think, have anything to be ashamed of from their performance. I think that there's a lot of people there that are out there that are trying to find a rhyme or reason as to what happened, and I just think that that's why we play the games, and that's why we go right to the ninth inning, and it's 2 outs away. Sometimes they were 90 feet away from winning the World Series, and one pitch, and that ties it up, and then. Oh, boy, right? So congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Let's not forget that that's not easy to do what they just did, and that's to win a back-to-back World Series. And, of course, I think we've created some new Blue Jay fans out there. I was talking with one of our councillors before we went on the air this morning, and I was talking to my stepmother, who has never watched a baseball game in her life, not even back in the 92 and 93 a go-around with the Blue Jays, and started watching. I don't think it was by choice, but started watching the Jays as the division series started. And I was talking to her yesterday, and she's a full-blown Jays fan, and now is looking forward to cheering them on for 162 games next year. So, at the end of the day, if that's what this did, and it created some new baseball fans, if it got somebody that perhaps has, maybe played a couple of games of schoolyard baseball and gets into something organized, and we find the next great superstar from Canada, then I guess it's all worth it. So that's my thoughts on the Jays. You might want to have your thoughts on the Jays when we open up the telephone lines today after 11 o'clock. But without further ado, We've got half of them here anyway. That laugh that you hear is the councillor for District Number 1, and that's Waverley Fall River and the beautiful Musquodoboit Valley, and that is Cathy Deagle Gammon. Cathy, welcome.
Thank you so very much.
That's one of my most favorite places in. I know I say that a lot, but I really love the Musquodoboit Valley. It's beautiful in there.
It is. It's absolutely beautiful. And, when you think about the fall and the colors, everybody talks about Cape Breton, and that's where I grew up.
Right.
And I love the colors in Cape Breton. And the first time, many years ago, when I couldn't get home for the colors and drove down through the Musquodoboit Valley, I was like, wow.
Right.
This is beautiful. Have you ever been to Phantom Falls?
Right.
And listen to the roar of that water coming off
when
the
there's
falls?
When there's water.
When there's water. It's beautiful. And I always add at the end of that tagline, and the 42 communities in between.
Right.
District 1 is quite expansive.
There's a lot of people that live in that district. It's large in stature, and it certainly is a busy place.
It is.
He's coming in with a helmet on. I don't know if that's a sign of how combative things are going to get in here today. I'll let him take a breath. That laugh, of course, is District 5 Councillor, Dartmouth Centre, Sam Austin, who apparently looks like rode his bicycle to the studio today.
I did, yes. I should have left an extra 5 minutes earlier, though.
Welcome, Sam. We were just talking about the Blue Jays and the series on the weekend.
Heartbreaking.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, I listened to it. I don't have Sportsnet, but I listened to it on the radio on the phone, and it's just like, even just listening without seeing it was just that moment of, oh my God, I can't believe this.
Like 90 feet, 2 outs. Anyway, did you watch it too, Cathy?
I did. I watched it last week. I was in Ottawa for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Advocacy Days and their AGM, and of course, everybody that was there was watch parties and watching the Blue Jays, so I got wrapped up in it. I love going to watch kids play baseball.
Right.
Watching it on TV and the World Series. I was never really somebody who did that. But I'll tell you, last week I became a Blue Jays fan and a more prouder Canadian
and that's
for how well they did.
And how it united the country. I mean, obviously we're in different times now, and but there was one thing that was a unifying voice for the last couple of weeks, or even all of October, and that's the support for the Blue Jays, right? Not often that you get all Canadians on board on something.
I'm like Cathy on that. I'm not a big sports fan, but I found myself swept up in the finals here.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get into Councillors on the Hot Seat, our annual Monday tradition here. And I'll start with you, Sam. I know you're just kind of settling in, but another story on Dartmouth Cove broke last week. We heard from the Premier on it, who made some interesting comments with regards to the bylaw that was passed by City Council. I know you were the driving force behind that in District 5. He said that the resolution was, I think he said, ambiguous, and it wasn't totally coherent, and he said it was pretty political in nature. I kind of challenged the political part of it last time around, saying that there haven't been many issues that I've dealt with in my 20 years here that I've seen so much community involvement in, and that is Dartmouth Cove. And I don't know how you call that political, but the comments on the resolution itself, you wrote it, did you not?
Yeah, I didn't write it. I mean, I directed staff, and they came back with bylaw amendments, which are the exact same as has already been applied in the Northwest Arm, and that this provincial government had no problem approving then. So you have to ask yourself, well, what's different about Dartmouth Cove versus the Northwest Arm? Why is one community deserving of consideration and another isn't?
It sounds to me that, and I'll come to you in a minute, Cathy, sounds to me like that is the setup for the new minister who just took over the file to send this back to you folks.
Yeah, so I'm really disappointed in the Premier's comments and the tone that he is taking on this. Calling something political, dismissing something that people really care about, I don't think is very respectful. And to say it's ambiguous and incoherent, it's been drafted by professional planners. It's the same as the Northwest Arm. His government has already approved these amendments in another location, so I don't get where ambiguous and incoherent is coming from. I'll tell you what is completely unambiguous. One of the proponents who stands to benefit the most if the city's bylaws is rejected, the Premier has described as a personal friend in very glowing terms. And I don't know how, government, if you are making a decision that stands to substantially benefit someone that you consider a personal friend, I would think that the smart, ethical thing to do would be to recuse yourself and let the process play out, not be spouting off before the Minister of Municipal Affairs has presumably even had a chance to look at it, because we only got notice that the staff at the province had sent it to the Minister on Thursday. So this was said with presumably with the brand new Minister who's only been on the job for a week and a half, not even had a chance to look at it, and the boss already dictating where things are going to go based on, it seems, a personal friendship.
Maybe that's where the pretty political comment came from.
Well, pretty political. You could look in a mirror, Mr. Premier.
Kathy, your thoughts on Dartmouth Cove and this latest salvo?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Sam, Councillor Austin, sorry. I was confused by the language that was used to say ambiguous. That was very confusing. So I believe now that the new Minister of Municipal Affairs is going to have quite a job to do to explain that, and to be very clear on what the decision would be and what's going to be behind that decision.
Feels like the Premier tossed Johnny MacDonald a real hot potato to start his gig, right?
Sure did.
Right?
Well, presumably if John A. actually has a decision to be made at all, and
Right.
it's just being dictated by the boss.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I got an email question to start things off, and it'll lead us into our discussion on the upcoming budget deliberations. And it comes to us from Rob, and it says, here's a question for the councillors. It says, given that our HRM represents 0.03% of total total greenhouse gas emissions annually, so if we even shut down every car, factory, power plant, and bus, we'd make no measurable difference to climate change. How about we cut the $18 million, the additional 3% climate tax, and that seems to pay for a lot for a symbolic gesture. I'll start with you, Sam, because I think the last time you were in here, you said that you were pretty open when you ran for re-election, that you were a big proponent of active transportation. So I'll start with you.
Sure. So, I mean, the question there is about the climate change tax.
Right.
And, climate change is one of these horrible issues. The caller's not wrong. We could solve everything here in HRM, and if the rest of the world doesn't do their part, then we're no further ahead on this issue. However, this is literally the dilemma of every city, state, province, country on this planet. It is a global problem, and we don't have a global government to mandate that, X is going to be what everybody does. We get together, we have diplomatic conferences where people try and hash out an agreement that folks will live by, but at the end of the day, all we can do is do our bit. And as a very wealthy country and a very wealthy part of the world, we have a moral and ethical obligation to do our part on this issue. And all we can do is cajole, negotiate, beg, plead with the rest of the world to also do their part. But we have to be on the right side of history on this. We have to do our bit, and that requires, it's not free.
Councillor Deagle Gammon.
So This was such a big part of a conversation last week in Ottawa during advocacy days. We met with senators, we met with MPs. One of the MPs that we met with was our very own Shannon Miedema, and who really was behind our climate action program here in HRM before becoming an MP. And the whole thing about the investment that we make in our climate action tax, like $1 spent saves us, what, 15?
It's something like that if
Yeah.
you calculate it down the road. Yeah.
Exactly. So what, people talk about death, by a million cuts. Well, this could be on the opposite side of that, right? This could be those little small measures that we make that will add up over time to give us a better place for the next generations to live with. I'm really worried about our future generations and the kind of world that we're going to leave them with. Just look at what we've been happening. Floods, fires, now we've got drought. I don't think that we can in any way say that this isn't an emergency and a crisis, and we have to start funding for solutions.
We're going to take our first break here on Councillors on the Hot Seat and continue the conversation on the other side. The telephone lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We're back right after the break. All right, we're back with our two councillors. This is Councillors on the Hot Seat. The telephone number is 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We'll start with you again, Sam Austin from District 5. We were talking before the break about budget deliberations, and those are to begin here very shortly. We've been told that there's about a 10% difference in what we need to do to get to that flat rate. That is the sort of goal, at least it seems to be the goal as of late, somewhere between $40 and $50 million. I'm told that the municipality is already lean, that we've gone through these processes for however many years it seems that I can remember, that we were, we find efficiencies, we find savings, and we borrow from reserve funds in order to get to that flat rate. It doesn't sound like that's going to be an easy go this time around. I guess my first question to you, Councillor Austin, is do you have any untouchables in your mind somewhere, like, for instance, we were just talking about Halifax. Is that somewhere where you're not willing to go to find those savings?
I have to be blunt. I mean, I've been now, this will be my 9th budget. Maybe actually it would be the 10th if you count the do-over year in 2020 where we had 2 budgets in 1 year. Right. So I've been around the block a couple of times, and, everyone can agree they don't want to pay more taxes, and everyone can agree that we shouldn't be mortgaging our future by spending all our savings or taking on unsustainable debt, and everyone can agree that, this service or that service is vital. So that's a no-win situation to start with. You're having to make some value choices. And generally, I am not in favor of slashing into city services. It's just not something that I see value in going after. I think most of what the municipality does is valued by residents. It is a lean organization already because every single year, council squishes and squeezes and squeezes. We've just run out of space, right? There's nowhere really else to go that's going to net major savings. So we have to be honest with people about, do you want to see service cuts that you're going to feel, or do you want to pay a little bit more in taxes? And that's really what I think we're coming to. And I generally lean towards paying a little bit more because, 50, 60 million, if you average that out over the average home, you're talking the difference between charging someone, maybe $40 more a year or $20 more a year. And in exchange for that, you get to keep things like, the green bins coming on summer, throughout the summer every week.
Got to ask a question about bike lanes. Obviously, it gets talked about here a lot. There's a significant dollar figure that is attached to the next phase of the active transportation plan. Are you willing to take a look at that, or is that something that you think we can live with, even though it may cost us more in taxes?
There's a lot of noise about bike lanes, but frankly, it's not going to. We have a structural deficit here of 50, 60 million, which is ongoing cost. Bike lanes, the big investment in that is a one-time thing. So you cut that, it helps you for a year, maybe 2, and then you're right back to where you are. And in the meantime, you haven't delivered on, we all know we're facing major traffic congestion, and that means building out solutions like transit and bikes. Like we could squeeze the municipality down to be very, very lean, but I'm not sure it's the kind of city we want to live in.
Do you see the argument, though, people? I mean, you listen to the show as much as I do.
Nobody wants to pay more in taxes, right?
And I hear a lot, and again, it's a segment of the population, but I hear a lot that people don't want these lanes, and yet it's $70 million.
Well, I mean, I think the challenge with budgeting as a council is if HRM was an individual, you can just make the choices of I don't value this or I don't value that. We as a council represent a huge swath of public, and there are people who hate bike lanes. I've certainly heard from folks like that. And there are people that love bike lanes and want to see more of that, alternative transportation. And what's valued to one person is completely not of value to another person. And, it's council's job to try and square that. And squaring that means things are messy, right? You can't be everything to everybody.
Councillor Deagle Gammon, your thoughts on golden gooses, as I've been calling them, when it comes to budget deliberations, particularly active transportation?
Well, when you think about District 1, it's predominantly suburban and rural, right? And they want sidewalks. They don't see bike lanes, the majority of them, as what they would value. But there is another part of my district that does, and they would love to be able to cycle from one end of the municipality to the other. I do have people that cycle to work from Oakfield, from Waverley, so there are people that cycle, and there are people that tell me that they would cycle if it was a connected bike lane, if they were all connected. the current configuration that they see right now, they see it as rather unsafe, right? They can cycle partway, and then they feel that they're at higher risk until they can meet the next segment of a bike lane. So what and how we fix that, I think it needs to be phased in, to be honest. I think that we need to look at that about what is measurably attainable in this year, the next year, and the next year. And I also would like to see where other levels of government, other orders of government can consistently share in that cost as well. Because I do believe that transportation belongs to all orders of government, and especially active transportation, because it is not something that has historically had the kind of investment that it does need. When we're looking at the crises that HRM is in right now around the populist vote for bike lanes against bike lanes, I think we need to look at what exactly are we building, and I think that's the report that we're waiting on. That's coming back to us. It's going to be, so is this an enhanced bike lane? Is this work is going to be happening on the road anyway, so we get to save money by putting in the infrastructure for the active transportation? That's the kind of detail that I want to be able to see to know how to vote appropriately on this when it comes to the budget.
Got an email question, Councillor. We'll get to the phones in a minute. Councillor Deagle Gammon, you mentioned you were away in Ottawa on the trip. Claire is writing, what was, who paid for the trip and how long were you away and what did you learn?
Oh my goodness, that's a lot.
Right.
You did, Claire. Thanks for the question. Taxpayers do, right? It is paid through the HRM. I was there from Tuesday to Friday. I made sure that it was as cohesive a trip as I could. What did I learn? So
This was Advocacy Days.
Yeah, it's Advocacy Days. So it's the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And so you get to meet with senators and MPs, both individually and then even as a group. So I actually, in FCM, sit on a committee around community safety. So I did meet with an MP responsible for the transportation portfolio, I believe. And so people were asking there about active transportation, about road infrastructure, where the future investment was going to be. Of course, the federal budget comes out on Tuesdays, so there was a lot of advocacy. I knew about some of the programs that were in an ask to the feds right now from HRM. One, for example, in my district under the Disaster Mitigation Fund, as a project on the Waverley Road, Trunk 2. There's a specific ask for some work that needs to be done there. So I made sure that the MPs were aware of that. When I met with senators, we were talking differently about what they can do in terms of research and what research was needed in order to make better informed decisions by the government. So we talked a lot about Disaster Mitigation Fund. We talked about policing. We talked about community safety. We talked about cell coverage, the lack of it in the rural Nova Scotia. And Senator O'Coin, actually, from Shuttacombe, he spoke very well in support of that being a topic that he will champion and bring to the Senate. So he's going to do some work on that. So I think I feel like I could talk for the rest of the hour on what I learned and who I spoke with and what we said, but I do believe that it was a valuable 3 days. And as well, the networking with other municipal leaders across the country. Everybody's facing the same thing. Everybody's looking at infrastructure needs. Everybody's looking at climate change. Everybody's looking at policing. Everybody's looking at homelessness, different approaches. So we are not unique in any way in the challenges that we have as a regional municipality.
We're going to take a break for the news. On the other side of it, we'll head to the phone lines. This is Councillors on the Hot Seats. It's Councillor Austin, Councillor Deagle Gammon, and me, and we're back right after the news. All right, halfway through Councillors on the Hot Seat. Time to get to the telephone lines. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And in case you're just joining us, in the studio today is District 1, Waverley Fall River, Musquodoboit Valley Councillor. That's Cathy Deagle Gammon. And in the other corner is District 5 Councillor. That is, of course, Dartmouth Centre, and it's Sam Austin. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Glenn to the show. Glenn, how are you?
Good, Dan. Thank you. And good morning, councillors.
Good morning, Glenn.
Morning.
Listen, Dan, if I can ask, I've been calling about this topic since you were filling in for Todd when he was in Vegas at the odd time for an answer with this topic, and I'm just wondering if I can reword it to a multiple choice question for the councillors.
As long as you do it quickly, Glenn, let's try that.
Okay, you cut me off whenever you want.
Okay.
Okay. So there's a woman walking down the sidewalk. She's a loyal taxpayer, middle-aged. A young man is riding a rental scooter, wearing headphones, no helmet, up the sidewalk, speeding, happens to hit her from behind. They both fall to the ground. He gets up, jumps back on his scooter, and leaves. The woman is laying in pain on the sidewalk, taken to the hospital, ends up in a wheelchair for life, needs 24-hour care. Who does she sue? The scooter rental franchise, the city council and mayor, city staff, the motor vehicle registry, the police association, the province, the federal government, or you can answer, I don't know. And please just answer those specific answers, please.
Thanks, Glenn. I'll start with you, Councillor.
I'm not a lawyer. I
liability has been a lot of
of
talk about liability with the scooters that we're renting now and stuff, and that's kind of where Glenn's getting at with this is if there is something tragic that happens with one of these things, who's liable?
I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I mean, generally, my understanding of the way the law works is you sue everybody, and then you let the court sort out who's actually at fault and apportion things out.
Councillor Deagle Gammon?
So, same. I'm not a lawyer, but so you sue everybody, and the court decides, and then you have case law. Because I think at this moment in time, we don't have any case law on the issue. Excuse me. I'm losing my voice.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's the curse of the studio. It happens to me all the time.
Okay. But yeah, I guess just to reframe that, you sue everybody, the courts decide, then you have some case law, and you know who to go with. But it's a terrible saga. And Glenn, I'm with you though in that I see these things. You know, I'm driving in around the city and I see people on scooters behaving in a way that they shouldn't. Sometimes I've called the non-emergency phone line, and I've said on this street, and you know when they say see something, say something, and I think that we actually need to start doing that.
If I can add,
Sure.
So, I mean, I think probably there'd be guidance here in terms of what happens when, if someone gets hit by someone driving and they flee the scene and it's a hit and run, right?
Right.
What happens there would probably offer a lot of guidance as to how this could play out. I think it's important to remember, right? We see these mobility scooters and, I've certainly seen people out there with, Oxford and Jubilee the other day. There was two young women, probably students, going through the intersection on the yellow, turning left onto Oxford, two of them on the same scooter, laughing their heads off. But I'm just looking, I was like, oh my God. Right. I hope this doesn't end tragically. And the point, though, is that folks on scooters don't have a monopoly on bad behavior on the road, right? Like the amount of speeding, texting and driving, drinking and driving, right? Like this is a human problem, not necessarily constrained to one mode of transportation.
This is a pilot project, as I understand it. This scooter and rental and bicycle rental. We see them on the sides of the sidewalks. I think there's some out in front of the station here.
I've used it actually twice.
There you go. So I guess the question, and I'm trying to get to Glenn's point here, is that if we don't know who's liable for these things, are we not possibly opening the city up to what could be a multi-million-dollar lawsuit?
Well, so this was a negotiated contract that Cathy and I just don't happen to know what the conditions are of that contract that our legal folks worked out. Doesn't necessarily mean the city's exposed, right? I just don't know enough off the top of my head to be able to answer that effectively.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. Your question, please.
Question is, Sam, Dan asked you a question of whether this 3% climate tax was on the table, as a potential cut to help keep a flat rate or a balanced budget. You didn't really answer that. Could you do that, please?
I think I was pretty clear about it. It's not on the table for me.
It's not on the table for you. Okay. You keep mentioning, or you were mentioning several times about this potential 10% is paying a little bit more. Sam, that's not a little bit more. That's a lot more. 10% of increase in any pay throughout the year is a big increase, in my opinion. Would you not agree? And calling it a little bit more, isn't that kind of trivializing it?
So it's a 10% change in the tax bill, not the tax rate. And when you boil that down to what that actually means for the average household, you're talking like, and this is just going from past budgets, we're talking in the realm of, are you going to charge people $40 more a year or, $90 more a year? I haven't got the actual figure yet from finance. It's been on my list, actually. Well, what is 10% this year, actually, in terms of real dollar amounts? Because oftentimes we get fixated on a percentage number when in actuality, over the course of a whole year in a household budget, the actual number is not all that much. Like, a lot of us on council did hear a lot of pushback this summer from the green bin service being reduced by a couple of weeks on either side of the summer heat. And what that saved the average homeowner was something like $1 or $2 a year. It's really kind of inconsequential, but yet there was a service cut that people really noticed. And I think that's the main takeaway.
But okay, but you've lost me there. You said 10% increase in our tax bill. Yes or no?
Tax bill, yes.
Yeah. So where do you come up with this? It's only going to cost the taxpayer $40 or $60 a year extra.
Well, I mean,
that's nowhere near 10% of your tax bill.
So what's your tax? What is your taxes over the course of a year?
Well, it's a hell of a lot more than $400 or $500, and if it's going to increase $40 a year, that means I'm paying $400 a year in taxes. That's ridiculous.
I think there's something lost there in the math because, whenever we've gone through the budget, like we boil it down to talking about what the average tax bill is for the average home in HRM.
But we don't even know what the assessment's going to be yet, right?
We don't have the assessment data, so that's still to come. But each year we try and average out the impact of the assessment by talking about things in tax bill. And so the tax bill is the increase in assessment plus the tax rate equals the cost at the end.
So what's the average tax bill for HRM taxpayers last year? What's the average one, roughly?
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but if I'll look it up on break and then I'll come back on.
Okay. 4,000, 5,000, 3,000, somewhere in that range maybe?
I can't tell you off the top of the head. I could tell you what mine is, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Okay, what's yours then? Let's work with that.
It's somewhere about $5,000.
Okay, if you pay 10% extra, that's $500 a year. It's not $40 a year. Be truthful with people. Come on, let's not play these smoke and mirrors games anymore.
So
people
all I'm telling you, how this exactly plays out there. Each year when we talk about the average tax bill, mine might be above average, right? What the average tax bill amount has been in that kind of space of under $100 is what the debate actually comes down to. Now, if you're at the higher end of the property market, it is a much larger amount. If you're at the lower end, it's a lower amount.
No, but 10% is 10%, and you're saying 40 to 60 or whatever dollars per year, the average person. Nobody is paying $400 or $500 a year in property taxes. 10% of $400 is $40 a year. In order for you to be right on that $40 figure.
If you want to leave an email, Chris, I can send you over the finance documents from last year where it talks about this.
Sam, you guys are not clear on what the heck you're doing. Do you wonder why people get upset about the way these deliberations go? You're talking 10%, then you're talking $40 a year, which is BS, and then you're talking this 40 or 50 million. Well, how many dollars per year is raised in property taxes in total? About 850 million, isn't it? Okay. 10% of $850 million is $85 million. Yet you're talking about 40 to 50 million that's needed to keep the tax rate flat.
So
that doesn't make sense.
There's also commercial taxes that are part of our property taxes. So you got a residential rate and you got a commercial tax rate.
Yeah, I understand that, but the total is about 850 million per year combined. Is that not correct? The total dollars brought in last year. Okay, well, you want 10% extra. You're asking for 85 million is what you're asking for. But yet where does this 40 to 50 million keep coming in that you have said yourself is needed to keep the tax rate and keep the taxes flat? That doesn't make sense. So you'd only have to raise the taxes 5%.
So
to come up with the 40 or 50
amount
million.
that we're short, and this is not, we haven't got into detailed budget presentations yet. This is just coming from stuff along the way here from finance. We are short about 50 to 60 million in the hole just to start with. So what the actual number at the end, they've been talking 10%, but nothing has been yet presented to us. So we still wait to see in about 3 weeks, I think it is, Cathy, that we'll see more and have more clarity as to exactly what the staff proposal is and what the choices council has to make.
Thanks for the call, Chris. We're up against the break. The phone lines are open, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues after the break. All right, welcome back. This is Councillors on the Hot Seat, and I would be remiss if I didn't offer one of our councillors an opportunity to respond to Chris's comments as Councillor Cathy Deagle Gammon.
The whole mic.
Well, yes, Sam, people like to talk to you. There's no question about that. But
Cathy knows more than me. She's the chair.
She does. She's the chair of the Audit and Finance Committee, so you might have some information that you'd like to share on this.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I do chair Audit and Finance, and therefore I chair the budget. One of the things that's really interesting, and I think that it's something that HRM needs to do some work on for next year, because it does feel like we do this dance that everybody comes up with a mythical number to say it's going to be this percentage. At the end of the day, we all know that it never really resides at that number. Lately, this is my 6th budget, I guess, if we count the 2020 being twice. And it always comes down to something less than. The challenge is that when we ask the staff to do the math, we say, okay, given the operational costs, because we've got 2 budgets, really. You've got your capital budget, and then you've got your operating budget. Yep. So on the operating budget, it's like, what are the collective agreements that were in place? What are our obligations that we already know of? What has council approved throughout the year? And then what are in the previous year? Did we approve anything that has a higher cost in this next year? So we know what our obligations are, excuse me, and we know what our previous revenue was. The difference is what they call that gap. And that gap is what they're talking about as being anywhere in between 40 million or
I'm
so.
hearing 40, 50, 60, somewhere in there.
We're hearing that. Even that number, I think, is a little bit fluid, because we have to know whether or not there are some other orders of government that are funding some of that gap. There are asks out that we don't have the answers to yet. So I still think, it's still, the math puzzle, I call it. So we know what the gap is. What we don't know is what the property valuations are going to come in at. So that's part of where our revenue comes from, right? So
and that's the
we've
assessment,
got that,
right?
the assessment value. The interesting thing about HRM is that we can only put together a balanced budget, right? So we can't budget for a deficit, which means that we can only take from the assessment roll that which we need.
But that being said,
the difference goes to the province.
Mayor Fillmore was in here on Friday and said that the debenture number that we're doing, which is essentially the way that the city borrows money, is high, and in the next couple, 3 or 4 years, could get into that area where it's concerning.
And that's on the capital side. Right. So we take out the debt. We use debt to finance our capital, and the debenture is when that capital is built and we have to start paying on the debts. And absolutely, Mayor Fillmore spoke well to that. Finance staff gave Audit and Finance Committee excellent presentation on what is that future look, how we're going to play out, and what the debentures would be, and what is our debt.
Get close to
right?
$500
billion. And what is the
right?
percentage? Yes. And what is that percentage going to be? So right now, our percentage of debt is in a healthy position. We continue on some of these larger capital projects without other orders of government with a significant investment. Then we have to really look at whether or not we can afford those capital projects, and we'll have to start looking at them.
And this might be, I know this is probably a number you don't have at the top of your head, but what's the debt servicing fee on that debenture? How much do we pay in interest on it?
We borrow through the province, and so I can't tell you that I know that in the moment. I probably knew it the other day.
Right. But it's a significant amount of a dollar figure, because it's obviously a 250 whatever million it is. That's a lot of money.
Yes, it's in the millions.
Right. So,
absolutely, about what you're paying back, yes.
Right.
So going back to the operating, just that other story that we're going to look at. So we have to figure out where the revenue is going to come from. Our reserves are pretty much depleted. I don't think that there's a lot of room to look at anything in reserves. We can only debt finance for capital. So we are, as a municipality, as most municipalities, 85% of our expenses are funded through tax. And that needs to change. That was one of the conversations, Claire, if you're still listening, that was one of the conversations that was happening in Advocacy Days in Ottawa, is that municipalities need to be funded better. That being solely on the taxpayer municipally is not a long-term solution, nor is it sustainable.
All comes from the same taxpayer, though, right? I mean, if it comes from the feds and if it comes from the province, it's still coming from the taxpayer. It does,
but the difference is that coming from the province or the feds, it's your HST, it's your goods and services. The province and the feds, they're getting their money right away. And the payroll rebates and all of that kind of stuff, right? So there's a difference in how that tax dollar comes. So in some ways, people see it as a hidden thing. You get a tax bill from the municipality. We're the only order of government that sends you a tax bill. You're paying your taxes throughout your lifetime, provincially and federally, right? So there's a little bit of a difference there in terms of the transparency in also about how money is collected and then how it is spent.
Councillor Austin, you said that you would be okay, or you think that people would be okay spending a little bit more in taxes, but aren't we looking at what could be a perfect storm coming forward? We're going to have an increase, and I'll use the 10% number. I know it's not going to be that, but let's say that there's going to be an increase in tax rate in HRM this year. We're looking at a 36% increase in Halifax water rates. We're looking at a 4 or 3.8% increase this year and next year in 27 in electricity rates. It's the taxpayer getting stretched and stretched and stretched.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the flip side is we can't make up an operating deficit without going at services. So, if you don't want to pay more taxes, right? Like, I think as politicians, we all have to approach things as adults and talk to people about realities. And so if you don't want more taxes, then we're having to pick some bucket of services that we are going to do less of. So is that decreasing our snow standards? Is that getting rid of summer green bin pickup? Is that having, fewer hours of parks and recreation or libraries, what have you? There's no free lunch, and that includes City Hall. We have to pay our way. And I did one advantage of being such a prolific writer on my website is you can go back, and I just wanted to clarify for Chris's question. I think what I got fixated on there is oftentimes in our debates, we're talking about the difference between two scenarios. And so in 2023, we were talking about 5.8% tax increase, what it would take to get it down to 4%. And it was just full of ugly, ugly cuts, right? The list was horrendous. And the difference in that between the 4% and the 5.8% for the average homeowner was about $80. So that's where my comment was, in my faulty old brain where things were resting on. And I think where Chris and I were miscommunicating there.
They're almost out of time. This hour goes way too quick with debate over budgets. I understand those deliberations are to begin in like a couple weeks, right?
I think it's literally just this month, 2 or 3 weeks out.
So we should know probably by the end of November.
We'll know what the starting stage is being set for, right? The starting number is never the actual number in the end. It always ends up being different in some capacity, sometimes really different, sometimes close. But never the same.
Anything going on in District 5 you want to bring to our attention?
We already talked about Dartmouth Cove. I would suggest to folks, if you care about that, write the province. The other thing is it closes tomorrow, I believe. We're doing some public engagement in the Creighton Park area about whether or not we should be putting a sidewalk on Birchwood. So if folks in Creighton Park want to answer that survey and have some feelings on that, the clock is ticking down for public feedback on that.
Cathy, District 1, what's going on?
Well, just if I might send my condolences out to the family of Bill Mont.
Right.
I had the pleasure to get to know him, so my condolences. November 11th, please come out to whatever Memorial Remembrance Day ceremony that you can. I'm privileged in District 1 to have 5 different locations. So this year I'll be in Middle Musquodoboit. And then on November 12th, what's going to be really good is the FRABA, the Fall River Area Business Association, is hosting an all orders of government meeting at the LWF Hall on the Fall River Road at 7 o'clock. And come on out. Meet the MP, the MLA, and your municipal councillor, me.
And maybe have a conversation or two.
Absolutely.
That's District 1 Councillor Cathy Deagle Gammon. Cathy, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
District 5 Councillor Sam Austin, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be chatting in the not-too-distant future about Dartmouth Cove again.
Yeah, probably.
Right. We're going to take a break for the news. On the other side of it, we're going to open those telephone lines. It's time for the first open hour of the week, the last bastion of democracy, a colleague of mine used to call it. And we're going to look forward to your comments. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour after the news. All right, welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. It's time now for the open hour, Manic Monday, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. You just listened to Councillors on the Hot Seat, and of course, when it comes to taxes, that tends to land on everybody's plate. We all have to pay them. We don't like paying more. Councillor Austin, during our segment today, saying that he thinks that a majority of constituents, HRM taxpayers, would be willing to pay a little bit more in taxes this time around to keep up with the services that we have. Math aside, would you be willing to pay a little bit more in tax to keep things the way they are? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We don't know what that number is going to be. We don't know what the number on our tax bill is going to be. And I continue to struggle to understand how we can base the tax number, the actual rate number, before we know what the assessment is going to be. It's the way it's been done here for many years. It's nothing out of the ordinary, but if you don't know how much money in revenue that you're going to have, and you're estimating it on the last, I don't know, I think you said 5 years of increases in assessment, then I'm not an accountant, nor would I ever play one on television. But that being said, how do we even know what it's going to be? And for Councillor Austin to say that he thinks that there are a majority of you will be willing to pay a little bit more on your tax bill to keep everything, or to keep the services that you enjoy. Some of you calling that cavalier with tax money. As I mentioned to the councillor, we're not only looking at an income tax. Well, we may be looking at an income tax increase. I don't know. The budget's on Tuesday. But we're looking at a municipal tax increase. We're looking at an increase in electricity rates. We're looking at an increase in water rates. I don't know about you, but my rent went up this year 5%. Probably going to go up 5% next year and the year after that. We're getting stretched pretty thin, aren't we? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. I want to pass along an email I received from Dawn during the first segment in response to my discussion on the Blue Jays. It said, Dan, I've been watching sports for 50 years, and I've never seen a team lose in such a cruel fashion. The baseball gods constantly dangling victory right in front of the Blue Jays, only to quickly snatch it away when the Jays went up and reached for it, and went on and on. It wasn't just Game 7, right? It was Game 6 too, with that ball getting wedged in there. I shouldn't say I've never seen it, but in a World Series game, a clinching game, I've never seen that. In one case, they were literally an inch away from victory, only again to have the baseball gods snatch it away. Nonetheless, when Lady Luck worked against the Blue Jays, they have nothing to be ashamed about. Greatest World Series ever. I can't say that. Thanks, Don, for the email, by the way. I can't say that because I haven't seen them all. But the World Series that I've seen, and I've been watching baseball, like I said, since 1992, The outcome of 92 and 93 might have been better, and I might have felt better going to sleep that night. But I don't recall a World Series that was as captivating as this one was. It went into extra innings in the 7th game. Man, what a way to lose. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. To the phones, we welcome Kirk to the show. Kirk, how are you?
Oh, I'm good today. Thanks for having me.
Sure, what's on your mind?
Well, I'd like to start off by quoting something from the CBC reported on October 10th. A recent report from Ottawa's fiscal watchdog found that house prices in Halifax are 74% higher on average than what the typical household can afford.
Right. Yep.
We're looking at, across our utilities between electricity and water in the next upcoming year, as I understand, it's going to be close to a 50% increase.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. So the very notion of a 10% increase on property tax and to be so cavalier and say, oh, it's only $300 maybe, is ludicrous to me. And no disrespect to any of the councillors that come on your show so graciously, but I've been listening to you guys for quite some time, and whenever there's a councillor on this channel, they never have any solid figures. They say, oh, well, it might be around 10%, but it might be lower. Well, if it might be lower, it stands to reason it could also be higher.
Fair point.
That's no good.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
Every time there's a councillor talking about something to do with the budget, everyone always has the same question. What are the numbers? And the councillors always say, oh, we don't have the exact figures here with us. That's actually mind-boggling to me, that you go onto a station for accountability and, oh, we don't have those exact figures. Like, how do you justify that?
Right. And you know, you're going to get the question, right, Kirk? Like, I mean, I've been asking the question for weeks now, and you know you're going to get the question.
Yes, exactly. And so it just seems ludicrous to me. You know, I just bought a house in Lower Sackville. I have $3,000 in property tax a year, roughly. So now it's another $300, is it?
And it could be more if your assessment goes up this year, right?
It is going to go up this year.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that it is.
Right.
And so just to have this cavalier attitude being like, oh, you know, we might not have to do a garbage pickup every 3 weeks instead of every 2 weeks, or the public park might be closed at 8 instead of 9. Am I not crazy for thinking that who cares?
You most definitely aren't crazy, Kirk. I agree with you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's just a ludicrous sentiment from start to finish. The actual attitude that I was listening to when the councillors were on previously was just felt like, for lack of a better word, very bourgeois of them to say, oh, it's only 10% increase, we're all going to have to make sacrifices. But like 10%, that could be 2 weeks of groceries. You know, it's hard enough. Imagine what you have to do with kids.
Right.
I'm sorry, but it actually is incredibly frustrating, just the attitude of it.
Kirk, I appreciate the call, sir.
No worries. Have a great day. Bye.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Kirk makes some great points. If it's 10%, and we don't know that that's the number, right? And it likely will be less, but let's just work with what we have. If it's 10% and it's $300 for him a year, he's right. That could be, well, I don't know if I could get 2 weeks of groceries for $300 these days, but it would make a significant dent. It's got to come from somewhere, right? You're not going to see an increase in your salary to match that, and then you're going to pay an extra 36% on your water bill on top of that, right? And you're going to pay an extra almost, 4% on your electricity bill in 26, and then again in 27. Nickel and dime, and I'm not being cavalier with $300. $300 is a lot of money for most people. It's a lot of money for me. But we're being nickel and dime to death with these things, and I just, when does it stop? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break. All right, welcome back. It's the Monday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. This is the Open Hour. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get right to the phones. We welcome Gary to the show. Gary, how are you?
Good. Very good, thank you. I hope you're doing well as well.
I am well, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, the tax increase and stuff you're talking about, I want to say that I'm opposed to it as well. I think they're taxing us and nickel and diming us. Not me. I'm doing okay, but my kids, they're finding it tough, like a lot of other people out there. High rents, prices going up and up and up with no end in sight, and I think it's wrong.
It's hard to budget for, Gary, when you really don't know, right?
Nobody I know has wages that are going up with these increases that we're seeing. It's unreal. And the councillor that was on a minute ago, he said, I don't always call in, but he made a comment. There's no such thing as a free lunch out there. And that really irritated me because there is such thing as a free lunch. And not everybody's contributing. And the people paying taxes and these bills like they do, they're the ones paying. Right. So it's not free for them, but it is free for a bunch of people that are getting a lot of free benefits and not really contributing anything. And I think that's frustrating a lot of people.
Gary, appreciate the call, sir.
Thank you for your time.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go back to the phones and welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
Good, boy. Good. How's yourself?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, it's funny. I didn't hear that comment. I was out of the truck for a few minutes. Yeah, it's called a food bank, but that's free lunch.
Yeah, fair.
Anyway,
and it's not free because there's people that work there, right?
Oh, I know that, but it's, for the starving people that don't have the money.
Got it.
Listen, I've been away for a little bit, and I heard at the beginning of the show, did you say that Bill, Michael, and Tony all passed?
They did, within like a week and a half of each other.
Oh, my God. That's a big loss to the people that lost them, but to the show, too. I mean,
well, no
they
doubt.
were great contributors.
Like I said off the top of the program, when you get regular callers here, they become part of the show. They become characters on this show, right? And I'm gonna seriously miss all three of them.
Yeah, and they all had their input, and yeah, and I think it's going to affect like myself and other callers and listeners. You kind of get attached to those people. Well, I used to get an awful kick out of Michael.
Yeah, so did I. I'm gonna miss his. He'd start off on a normal plate and then get himself all wound up by the end of it, and it used to make me smile every time he called. Somebody's gonna have to step up and be a regular caller. Mike, can I count on you now?
Well, and you know what? I'm kind of really liking what's her name there, Nicole, is it?
Right.
Oh, my God, she's a plethora of information.
There you go.
Anyway, that's a tragedy. We lost those three. They were great callers. You know what? As far as the taxes and everything we just can't seem to get these guys off of this whole bike lane. It's what, like 0.045% of the population, if that high?
Less than
for bikers?
Yeah.
I was over for a doctor's appointment this morning and drove from Cole Harbour to Halifax, and then I drove out to pick up the truck, and that was out in Hammond's Plains. I have not seen one bike, and that's a lot of driving and a lot of ground to cover. And they talk about taking back like 2 or 3 weeks for garbage collection. Like, start looking after the things that are important to the city. And right now, they all get on there, and I hate to call anybody a liar, but every one of them talks about, I've got hundreds of people calling me that they want more bike lanes, and where are they? Anyway, buddy, that's pretty much my gap.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Have a good day, bud.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Jamie, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you this morning?
Good. What's on your mind, sir?
Just following up on Mike with the, Sam Austin must be, if he's still listening, I'd like to maybe, have some video on him, how much he's squirming, because he's opened a can of worms with his comment here this morning.
Yep. No doubt about it.
And if he's looking for, he says, well, we got to cut some services. Then Mike nails it on the head. Let's do it. If we did a plebiscite and we got 80% turnout for voters, I guarantee you that bike lanes would crash and burn, and there's our savings. So we don't have to raise our taxes. If he really means it, then let's put the money where the mouth is, Councillor Austin.
See, the part about it that bothers me, Jamie, and I appreciate your comments, is that you know, I've asked a lot of councillors, you know, with this tight, and everybody has said the same thing. They've all said that, you know, the city's finances are in kind of rough shape, and we're going to have to make some decisions. But every councillor that I've spoken to has and even the mayor have untouchables, things that they're not willing to look at, which it blows me away. If your household budget is on the wrong side and you're in the red and you gotta sort things out, everything's on the table for you, right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, man.
It's great show. Continue your great work.
I appreciate it, Jamie. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And I know that the budget of the city and the budget for a household are two completely different things, but it's kind of the way that it gets perspective for me. Is that if, you know, for whatever reason, and hey, if my taxes go up 10%, my water rate goes up 36%, and my electricity rate goes up 4% this next year and the year after, or whatever it is, I might have to look at my budget. And I'll tell you what, everything's on the table there. And many families are in the same situation. I say it all the time here on the program. That, you know, I just don't understand how a family with a couple of kids in HRM is able to function, and we're just going to keep piling on these extra taxes. It's got to be a scary situation for many people out there. I mean, I'm a renter, so obviously I don't pay property tax, but that's going to get passed on to me, even though it can't, because I'm already at the top of the rent cap. But if that rent cap comes off, yikes, right? Water rate increase is going to hit everybody. Electricity rate's going to hit everybody. The property tax rate's going to hit everybody. It has. It's to a point now where we're getting into austere times, and I mean, we're talking a federal budget that's coming out tomorrow, and austerity keeps getting pushed around there. So, what does that mean? We'll find out tomorrow, I guess. Nelson, how are you?
Good day, sir. I'm surprised I got on so quick.
What's on your mind?
First of all, my condolences to Mike from Cape Breton's family. He was very entertaining and very truthful in many ways, and it'll be unfortunate that we won't hear his voice again.
For sure.
The reason that I'm calling is about the immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just in the last 3 weeks or so, I have run into a number of young people who cannot find work in this province.
Right.
They absolutely cannot, and they are Nova Scotians who cannot find any work, and they are unfortunately unskilled. But the immigration minister was here 3 weeks or a month ago, and she said that the bulk of the immigrants coming into the country are going to come to Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly do not need any more immigrants in Nova Scotia.
And to add to that point, Nelson, to add to that point, she said that the province of Nova Scotia has asked for more.
Yes, and that is the multinationals and the wealthy for cheap labor. The people in Nova Scotia need jobs. When are we going to start looking out for our own? It's unfortunate, but there are really too many immigrants here now. There really are. And the unfortunate part is some Nova Scotian employees, and I know this for sure, employers are not hiring Nova Scotians. They're hiring the immigrants over the Nova Scotians. That's what's happening here now.
Why are they, Nelson?
Simply because it's cheaper for them to do that.
How?
And they make more money.
How is it cheaper?
Well, some of the reasons is because the immigrants don't ask for overtime and other benefits like that. They don't ask for it, so they don't have to pay it.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Nelson, but you're telling me that immigrant families are willing to work cheaper than Nova Scotia families.
Yes, absolutely they are.
So how is that an immigration problem?
It's an immigration problem because they're bringing them in and they're taking the jobs away from Nova Scogians. Well, the federal government and the provincial government.
That's where you and I. That's where you and I, Nelson, are going to disagree, because if immigrants are able to come here and find work, and Nova Scotian families are unable to, and it's because they won't work as cheap for that job, then are they really taking the jobs away?
Yes, they are, because you're supplying. It's supply and demand.
I get it.
Once you have too many, there are too many here applying for the same job, so it keeps the wages low. And that's why Nova Scotians are being forced on the street. When are we going to start looking after our own? We need to look after Nova Scotians.
Job's not a birthright, though, is it?
It's not a birthright, but why should you bring somebody in from another country?
But they're not bringing people in to work. The immigrants, Nelson.
You continually fight against this, and
because I don't think you're right.
I see these people. You're wrong, Dan. You're absolutely wrong, and every time that somebody brings something like this up, you get your back up to defend them. When are you going to start defending Nova Scotians and defend them that they deserve a job?
Well, it's not a birthright. The job is there, and if they're not willing to work for the wage that's being paid, is that not a bigger problem?
No, it's not a big. How can you work for a wage that's not going to give you enough to live on, that you can't afford an apartment, that you can't afford to feed yourself? And if this wasn't such a huge supply of
then
people,
how are the immigrants able to do it? Nelson,
the immigrants are the ones who are taking these small jobs and living in apartments with 10 and 15 where there should be 2, and that is why they can afford to do this. What they're trying to do is force Nova Scotians back to a third world situation. The same thing that these immigrants have come from is what they're trying to force Nova Scotia workers back to. We need skilled employees here, skilled people here. We do not need any more unskilled people. We need our people in Nova Scotia to have a reasonable chance of getting a job.
Nelson, you and I are going to agree to disagree on this today. Thanks for calling.
We certainly will, Dan. Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I hear it from employers all the time that, and I'm putting quotes around this, Nova Scotians aren't willing to work for what they're being paid or what the job is paying. A job is not a birthright. Just because you're born in Nova Scotia doesn't mean you get an inside line on a job. That's all I said. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. We got jammed telephone lines, so we'll get to them very quickly. I will pass along this little bit of information. I was watching a rerun on the weekend from 1975. It was an episode of King of Kensington. I was watching it on, I think it was the CBC Gem app. Anyway, the debate around the table in 1975 was how immigrants were coming to the country and stealing everybody's jobs. So this isn't anything new, folks. This debate has been going on for many, 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 many years. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to Chris. Chris, how are you?
Hi, Dan. Thanks for taking my call. I don't want to use up all the oxygen, but I think it's important to keep the conversation with regards to our budget and the councillors debating it. I think it needs to be kept in the forefront here.
Sure.
As far as I'm concerned, I think you'd agree with me, just like your home budgets, everything with City Council, everything should be on the table as far as cuts to balance the budget. Do you not agree with me? Everything should be on the table.
All right. Well, absolutely. It should be.
Okay, absolutely. Now, I think too often we're seeing councillors that push ideological agendas rather than practical agendas. And good example is that 3% climate tax. I think that brought in, correct me if I'm wrong, about 18 or 20 million.
I think it's 18, yep.
18 million last year. Well, if they've got to find 40 to 50 million in savings, and I'm still confused about the numbers, but if they've got to find 40 to 50 million, 18 million is a little over a third of that, right there in the one item. Bike lanes, I'm sure they can come up with quite a few million there if they just put a pause on them. I'm not saying necessarily.
I think the bike lanes are part of Halifax, I think. Is that how that it works? Because it's active transportation that's in there.
Well, you might be right, but I think.
And then we're going to switch back and forth for the capital budget, which is the actual infrastructure.
Yeah, well,
right?
See, that to me is just smoke and mirrors.
I get it. It's the same pile of money, right?
It's the same pile of money, and it's like saying, well, you don't have to pay in your own home. Well, you don't have to pay much for your heat and your lights and that, but you got a great big fat mortgage payment to make. It's still a payment you have to make no matter what.
Right.
But the bike lanes, I think, certainly this Halifax that 3% will not cover the shortfall over the next few years that those bike lanes are running into. And Sam saying about one person wants one thing, one person wants the other, what I think these councillors have forgotten is, what do the majority of the people want? What do the majority want, need, and expect from our council? And I know it would be almost impossible to do, but I think that the council's salary should be based upon performance. And if they can't balance a budget, or they can't keep things reasonable, when I say reasonable, a maximum tax increase to the amount of the CPI. That's kind of a benchmark that a lot of institutions use and so on, do they not? On increases and so on, if they match the CPI. I'd be okay with that. But again, it underscores, the conversation I had with Sam underscores how mixed up these council members seem to be when it comes to talking dollars and cents and percentages. We don't know what the assessment's going to be. That's going to be a big number right there, or a big influence on how far they have to go with these things and whether they're able to cut or whatever. But the bottom line is, it's not, and according to Sam, it's not going to be $40, $50, $60, $80 a year.
It's going to be $200
extra.
or $300 or $400, right?
It's going to be in the, well, Dan, if they want 10% and you pay, like the gentleman out in Sackville that called in, he's paying $3,000 a year for property taxes. Well, that's $300 a year. I'm paying a hell of a lot more than $3,000 a year, and so mine's going to be even more.
Plus your assessment increase, don't forget.
Exactly, plus the assessment increase. Now, with the assessment increase, the Canadian Property Real Estate Association has stated just a couple of weeks ago, I think, that sales are down dollar-wise about 5% in 2025 from where they were. So is this going to reflect on our assessment? I doubt it very much. We'll have some kind of an excuse as to why that can't be factored into it. But people out there, listen to what's going on and keep these councillors' feet to the fire, and make them come up with numbers. They all come on your show and they haven't got numbers. Oh, if you want to email me or you want to whatever. No, these are numbers you should have right on the top of your head, I think anyway. But whoever's out there listening, this affects you all, whether you rent or whether you own your property or not. And quality of life comes down to one thing, Dan. It comes down to, do I have enough money to feed myself, feed my family, pay my bills, and enjoy a reasonable level of life? And these constant increases, whether it's 36% on the water, 10% on taxes, whatever, they all add up. Contrary to Sam, these little bits people wouldn't mind. Well, it's all the little bits add up to a big bit, in my opinion. We got to pay attention to that.
All right, Chris, have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877, 801-8255. First-time caller, and it's Jeff. Jeff, how are you?
Hey, Jeff, how you doing, man? Or, sorry, hey, Jeff.
That's your name, Jeff.
Caller, there you go. Nervous, right? How you doing, Dan?
Good. What's on your mind, sir?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. Really, though, I would definitely echo what Chris just said. Every time, I've listened to you for a long time, and it seems like this city council and previous council, but not so much this one. Yeah, they don't really know what the heck's going on, it seems like. But anyway, that's not what I called for.
Sure.
Immigration.
Yep.
I work a labor job. I've been working this, quite a long time, almost 25. I'm 40 years old, so let's say I've been working 25 years in the labor industry. Well, I've never seen anything like it in my life, trying to get someone to come to work every day. And I'm not talking like it's crazy. We can't hire anybody for $20 an hour.
So it doesn't matter if they're a, quote, Nova Scotian or a, quote, immigrant, right?
Well, to be honest with you, man, we have 3 guys from India, and they're here every day. And if we didn't have them right now, holy crap, man, we wouldn't be getting stuff pushed out the door. Right. And, we're a cabinetry company, and we build furniture for a bigger ex-company, right, that's, building other properties and stuff. So, you know what I mean?
I hear you.
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be getting the stuff out. So I guess that's all I got.
All right, Jeff, appreciate it. Keep calling, okay?
Thanks, brother. Have fun. Bye-bye.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
Good. It's on your mind, sir.
So I just want to talk about what Nelson was talking about.
Sure.
So I don't know that immigrants are coming and telling employers they'll work for less money, if that's the case or not. But I do know there is a program through the federal government, and this isn't social media stuff. A good friend of mine uses it for his business, and the company where my wife works, they also use it, where you sponsor
the temporary foreign workers program, right?
No, not temporary. This is, you sponsor a newcomer, not an immigrant that's been here 5-6 years, but a new immigrant to the company, and the federal government will pay that person's wage 30% for 3 years. So I personally don't think that's right. Like, why should
does that work? And I'm not saying you're wrong, Mike, at all. But does that work for like a service industry job if you're working at, I don't know, at the coffee shop or whatever?
I'm not sure the ins and outs.
Or is it a skilled labor position?
One company is a truck driving company,
So
and the
skilled.
other one builds modular homes.
So skilled, right?
Right. So, but I know there are lots of skilled people out there that, I mean, just so if you're fresh out of school, you're technically a newcomer to the trade. Why doesn't the government do the same thing for someone fresh out of school, regardless if they're an immigrant or?
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
There used to be maybe they're gone now, but there used to be programs for students that were fresh out. I don't know if they're still using those or not.
Well, I know there is one for a tax rebate.
Right.
For they get up till they're 30 years old when they're fresh out of school.
Sure.
I mean, if you can hire an immigrant and have 30% of their wages paid, or sorry, I should say immigrant because a newcomer does that, and get 30% of their wages paid. I mean, that's not fair if you ask me. And one other thing I have to say, when you and Nelson were talking,
sure,
you're saying about a job in Nova Scotia not being a birthright, and it's not. But how would you feel if all of a sudden Rogers says, Dan, we got someone to come to your job tomorrow?
Yeah, but they're not firing people. That's a bad analogy because they're not firing people to take those jobs.
Okay.
Right?
What if you applied for a job and you have all the qualifications and you're just asking for the going rate for what your job is, and then someone else comes and says,
but the problem is the going rate, isn't it, Mike? Because I mean, I hear their last caller said it that even the going rate is not what people are willing to work for that are and I'm putting quotes around Nova Scotians because I really hate brushing everybody, but I don't think that immigrants are coming here from wherever they're coming from to work for minimum wage jobs, are they? To come steal them?
I don't think so. No, I don't think they're. That's what I said. I don't think they're going, oh, I'll do this job cheaper.
I'm gonna come here and go work at a coffee shop my whole life. Like I have trouble with that.
But on the other hand, Dan, you look at where a lot of them are coming from, and a coffee shop job here is probably a lot better than some of the jobs that they get in third world countries.
I don't think there's any doubt. But they're living here, so they're paying the same taxes and the same rent that you and I are paying, right?
No, I agree with that.
Fair enough.
All right, man.
Have a good one, Mike. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. Open hour continues on the other side.
X.
Welcome back. A few minutes left here in the open hour. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. A couple of lines open, so if you want to try and get on, we can get to as many as we can get to here. Again, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome John to the show. John, how are you?
I'm all right, Dan. Just with this temporary foreign worker thing, so if you got your keyboard there or anybody out there listening,
yep.
Temporary foreign worker program is also the labor market impact assessment. So if you type in LMIA.map.org, go on that. There's over 2 million temporary foreign workers. It'll zoom in on any city in your location.
Sure.
Like just the north end Halifax, there's 500 alone.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, yes, I have customers in that with my business. Yes, these businesses are getting subsidized. That's why, like friends I had that were supervisors at Tim Hortons, they don't necessarily fire you. What they do is they cut your hours back so that they quit. So you quit.
John, that you mentioned the LMMI or MIA, easy for me to say, right?
LMIAmap.org.
How is it that an employer can afford the $1,000 fee per worker, the $155 work permit, flying people here to do those jobs, and putting them up? How is that cheaper than hiring a Nova Scotian?
Well, they're not paying all their housing in a lot of cases. Like I don't have enough time to get into the whole thing with a 2-minute phone call for you. All I'm trying to do is give you the numbers. But
those are the numbers. Like it's $1,000 fee just to get somebody to come here, plus $155 work permit, and then they got to fly them here.
But if you're getting to pay someone a less than minimum wage,
but they're not paying them less than minimum wage on the foreign. They're not. The foreign worker plan is to get people here because they cannot find anybody that will do that job. period.
So the last thing I'm going to say is I have a video, and I showed this to Todd a while ago at the Halifax Shopping Centre. There was an opening for 10 food court jobs in June. There was over 500 people lined up for just food court jobs.
I hear you.
Mostly Canadians that can't get work.
Right.
But there's so many people here now that there's just not enough resources, housing, or jobs to go around.
And you know what? I'll agree, John. I'll agree with you with that. There's a deficit in jobs, and there's no doubt. I mean, just take a look at the job fairs.
I'm going to send you that video.
No, you don't have to, John. I believe what you're telling me, but it's to blame it on the temporary foreign workers program. I don't buy that. And you and I are going to agree to disagree on it.
Well, go on LMI-map.org and
sure.
You can see that there's over 2 million in the country.
Yeah, but they've also paid $1,000 just to get the fee done. So how is that cheaper?
I'm telling you, dude. Like I can't say their name or businesses on the phone, but they're getting half the wage covered.
All right, John. Appreciate it, sir.
Alrighty.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I don't know if you can remember, we talked to somebody from Cape Breton in an area where there wasn't young people to work. It's an agricultural job, right? And he said that he has to fly the workers up to work on the fields. He has to pay that $1,000 fee. He has to pay the $155 work permit. He feeds them and provides them transportation. You can't tell me that a Nova Scotian that is going to be cheaper than hiring a Nova Scotian. You can't tell me that because the math just doesn't work. I think that the very end of John's call hit the nail on the head. I think that there is an awful lot of competition for jobs out there. And it's easy to blame immigration, right? That's all I'll say. Where are we here? Let's go here. Gloria, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I am well. What's on your mind today?
I'm calling kind of sad that we've lost three of our characters.
Right.
Bill and Tony and Michael.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, they were quite the guys, and I offer condolences. I went in Saturday and read an interview on Google that somebody did with Bill. And it was fascinating. It was supposed to be 4 weeks ago, and Bill was still upbeat. He wanted to find somebody to help him with that cemetery, and he'd like to get back into auctioneering.
Right.
But the biggest thing in his life was that he found out he was Lebanese.
Right. Absolutely.
And the life Bill went through, we hear today, people are in trouble because they had a hard life. Well, Bill didn't hold anything against society because of the way he came, working at 12 years old.
Yeah, he was, we talk about people being active in their community. I know, Gloria, you certainly are, but Bill was extremely active in the community throughout his entire life.
Bill had an interest. The other thing, he didn't talk in the interview about the flag that he never got, and I can never figure that out.
You know what we should do, Gloria? I think that we should ask City Council to fix that. And in honor of Bill, let's put a flagpole up. But let's put a flag up at Point Pleasant Park or at the Public Garden, and put a plaque on it and put Bill's name on it, because I think that'd be a fitting tribute.
Yeah, and very quickly on the councillors.
Sure.
You'll probably agree to disagree with me, but a lot of them are there. They don't know why they're there. They're not there. They were elected to represent the people, and they've lost their way. A lot of them are there. They're getting a salary that they could never realize out in the real world. Some of them think they died and went to heaven, but they want to start paying attention to what the residents want. That's what they're there for. Never mind their agendas. I'll let it go at that. Have a great day.
Thanks, Gloria, and I think I can agree with you on that. I'm not going to disagree with you. I think that gets lost in the shuffle sometimes, is that you're there to represent all of your constituents, not just the loud ones, all of them. Last word today goes to Ken. Ken, how are you?
Good, and I'm going to agree with you with the councillors and that. Like I find it phenomenal that they keep talking restraint and all this here, and the bike lanes are not on the chopping block between Sam Adams and Councillor White. You know, it makes it really fishy. It smells really bad. Like, what personally do you have in this where you keep going after the bike lanes? Now, he's going to lose his seat the next way because they have a whole lot going on over in District 5 that they're not even including him in because he's not even listening to what they're saying anyway, right? Which is sad. It's pathetic. And, by the way, Gloria, thank you for your service, too. You probably didn't know Gloria was honorary colonel.
I actually did know she was. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I seen her down at the Micmac Tavern there a little while back, and I had my jacket on, and she come up and said hello and said, yeah. Anyway, and I'll just say one quick point on the immigration that I've known at least, and I have three people, right, or three, a person that owns three fast food places here in town, and they use the program, right, and they can't keep the workers in. But I've had 4 people with daughters and sons or whatever that cannot get a job, will not get a call back from Tim Hortons, McDonald's, Burger King, whatever the case may be, any of the fast food restaurants. My daughter is now down with me for the week. She goes to NSCC during the week, right? She's with her mom. She drives back to Bridgewater every weekend, Dan, because she can't get work here in the city.
Appreciate you sharing with us, Ken.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-880-1825. Thanks to all of you who dialed the numbers and joined the conversation. I truly appreciate it. We're going to stop and take a break. And on the other side of the news, the hour number 3 is going to continue. We're going to do a little bit of a focus on the federal budget. We've talked about the municipal budget a lot. We're going to connect up with our Parliament Hill reporter. That's Cormac MacSweeney. He's going to join us right after the break. I guess when it comes to immigration, let me leave you with this. If it wasn't for immigration, I wouldn't be talking to you on the radio right now. I'm a first-generation Canadian. My family immigrated here and went through the same struggles that we're talking about today, and those struggles are going to continue, and we're going to continue to have those conversations right here on the Todd Veinotte Show. It's almost cliche, but the saying stands true tomorrow that all eyes will be on Ottawa as the federal finance minister puts on the brand new shoes that he bought today and delivers Mark Carney's first budget as prime minister. There's a lot of goodies that we know about thus far, but as with every budget, the devil may be in the details. Very pleased to welcome back to the show who haven't talked to him for a long time, and that's our friend on Parliament Hill, and that is Cormac MacSweeney. Cormac, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. It's Christmas come early for you guys that work the Hill beat, isn't it?
Well, it feels like 2025 has been a year full of Christmas and chaos for people working on Parliament Hill. It's been a busy week. It's hard to believe that January 6th, we kicked off this year with Prime Minister Trudeau resigning, and so much has happened since then. But yeah, the budget is going to be a big one. It feels like every moment on the parliamentary calendar has been a big one this year.
We've got some glimpses over the last few weeks, right? $9 billion for defense, which is obviously going to be a talking point here. $13 billion or more for the Build Canada agency, $2 billion for nuclear reactors, and so on and so forth. But there's still a lot of stuff that's likely in this budget that we don't know a lot about.
Yeah, we'll be looking for that investment side very much so. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, defense is going to be a big one. We got to hit that 2% target, which the government has signaled, look, we're pretty sure we're going to get to that NATO 2% target. We're well on our way. That doesn't seem to be the concern, but the eyes on the defense spending will be on that 5% target within the next decade that the government's committed to. 3.5% of that is going to be defense-only spending, and then the other 1.5% will be on related spending. So how the government plans to get there, the defense minister has promised to lay track for that. So we'll see what the plan is and how much detail we get out of that tomorrow. But yeah, the other investments, we'll be looking for any other cash for major projects that help create job growth and economic growth at this time of our trade war with the United States. We'll be trying to see whether there's any additional cash for housing beyond the plans that we've already seen from this government, and then whether or not we see any hard-hit industries getting any further support. From across the country, you got forestry out in BC, you've got auto, steel, and aluminum in Ontario and Quebec. And then, we can't just look at the U.S. tariffs. There's also these Chinese tariffs, canola in Saskatchewan, seafood out there on the Atlantic coast, where people are getting hit hard by tariffs from markets where we normally rely on, and people need support. So there will be an eye out for that, even though a lot of support measures have already been announced. People will be looking for more, and there have been requests for more at a time that the government says they will invest, but also pull back on spending. And so those public service cuts, aside from the Defense Department, there are going to be cuts left, right, and center within government to try and balance the operating budget within 2 years. So a lot of eyes will be on who's going to get cut, which departments have to suffer, and which programs may just not be renewed, because some of them are temporary programs as the government tries to rein in spending and invest in the economy.
Those cuts have been talked about for some time, Cormac, and I know many in the public service will be watching real close tomorrow when the document's delivered.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're going to have a fight on your hands with public sector unions. The government has signaled that they want to try and do a lot of this through attrition. However, a lot of experts doubt that is going to be possible. If you are letting a lot of programs that may be coming up to their sunsets and just letting them go and not renewing them, that could end up, helping with a lot of that. But you're going to have regular people who may get shifted. This is the other thing. Could we see the government follow its word on the attrition aspect by shifting people's jobs towards the Defense Department or offering people within the public service new positions within defense? That would help grow the defense budget simply by shifting public service workers over there. I'm not sure if that's what we're going to see in the budget tomorrow, but there's a lot of speculation about how the government's going to play with numbers to A, hit those NATO targets, but also B, try and achieve the cuts internally that they're talking about without doing massive job losses. But I'm sure the public sector unions and public sector workers are going to have their eyes on the details of what comes out tomorrow. No chance that the government's going to raise taxes to pay for all this, are they? No, they've said that they want to reduce taxes and make the environment a little bit easier for people to operate and grow the economy. So there's no signal that they're adding any significant taxes, but we'll wait and see what's in the fiscal plan to see whether that's true or not, because sometimes governments say something and then kind of do things, do something the opposite and try and sort of fudge ways in which they're going to do it. So we'll see what happens. But it doesn't appear that the government is trying to raise taxes at this point. And we'll see what the details are when we get that plan. Cormac, I don't know if this is just something that political pundits kick around every time we have a budget with a minority government situation, but we do have that. And of course, when that happens, then the stories start getting written about this budget might fail and we may go to the polls. Do you think that's going to happen? It's possible. You can't discount that at this time because it is a possibility on the table. I think a few weeks ago, we probably would have thought no, but a lot of the rhetoric that we've been hearing, a lot of the positioning is maybe it could happen. The government has been signaling they're ready to fight an election if it's necessary on this budget. But you do have things like the opposition leader who has a leadership review coming up in January, in Pierre Poilievre. He set some demands that might make it very hard for him to support this budget, such as saying the deficit needs to be capped at $42 billion. That just doesn't seem to be in the cards right now. The government's already said it's going to be substantially bigger than what they had in the last economic update, which was some time ago, but nonetheless, it's going to be bigger than that. And the estimates are $70 to $100 billion. So that would put the Conservatives in a hard place to support this. So they're probably not going to go on board. The Bloc Québécois has already signaled very clearly they're not getting what they demanded, which is, more health transfers and special tax treatment for Quebec. They don't expect that, and so they don't seem to be expecting to support the budget. The NDP is kind of the wild card in this. There is no more deal in place to prop up the government, and the NDP has already said that they're not happy with the idea of an austerity budget. I mean, this is the party that says that it's the party for union jobs, and we're going to see a lot of public sector union jobs potentially on the chopping block. So they're not too pleased with this, and they don't even like the NATO spending targets as it is as a party. So there won't be a lot in this budget that I think the NDP feels it can support, but what they could do is that they could abstain from voting. So they could protest it and say they hate it, they don't like it, and then just not send up their MPs for a vote. They've got 7 MPs. That's just enough MPs to be missing from the House of Commons that day for the budget vote, which I believe should be around November 17th. But if they all abstain from voting, then that'll be just enough. If all the Liberals show up, that'll be just enough to get this bill passed. We'll have to see how it plays out and whether Canadians could be heading to the polls around Christmas time.
It's political theater at its grandest, isn't it?
It is. It's a game of chicken, really, right now. We'll see who budges first.
How does this budget, this austerity budget as it's being called, how does this impact the popularity of Prime Minister Carney?
Well, it's very interesting as we see the numbers play out. You know, the Conservatives saw a boost in support, but leader Pierre Poilievre has not really gained in popularity the same way his party has. So there's a bit of a leadership question around all of that. However, he's been saying and doing a lot of the things that I think a lot of people in his base do like. The other question, though, is, you know, as you point out, the Prime Minister. We've had this trade war, and so far, since the spring, there have been vows that he's the best person to deal with Donald Trump, and we haven't seen any deals in place to get any sort of tariff relief up until now. The only tariff relief we've seen is Canada dropping its tariffs on the U.S. rather than the other way around. So voters, I think a lot of pollsters have said that voters are still cutting Carney some slack because President Trump is the most unpredictable president the U.S. has ever had. We saw that in the first term. It's even more so in the second term. And so Canadians have been cutting Carney some slack. The question is, how much more runway does he have if he cannot get something going for Canadians soon in terms of tariff relief, or at least rebuilding the economy in a way that these tariffs don't matter as much anymore. So we'll just have to wait and see. But if we do head to the polls now, I think there are some projections that the Liberals could gain seats, the Conservatives could lose seats, the NDP could gain seats. But you know, that all depends on how much faith you have put in these public opinion polls. Each party does their own polling, and they'll make their calculated estimates based on that.
The last 2 interactions that Mark Carney's had with Donald Trump was ring kissing and an apology. It doesn't look like it's the forceful Carney that we saw in those elbows up campaigns, right?
Yeah, it's a different tack than we've seen. It was initially it was a lot of rhetoric about standing up to the U.S., as you say, the elbows up campaign. But since then, you know, there have been better meetings with Trump than what we saw under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and yet Trump continually threatens to raise tariffs on Canadians. Now, no matter who you blame for the more recent threat, whether it's the Ontario government, the federal government, Donald Trump, the fact of the matter is we have another 10% tariff on our goods, which may not be on the CUSMA goods, which is a large majority of our trade. So we'll see what happens there with that, but that is still lingering over us. And the government, to give you their point of view on this, they say, look, yes, things have not turned out exactly how they wanted it initially in the springtime, but they're still working on it. They're working hard. They're making progress. They were very close to a deal until that Ontario ad came out, but they continually point out that Canada still has the best deal out of any other country in the world because of CUSMA and CUSMA not being hit by the tariffs that Trump has tossed out there. And so a vast majority of our trade, more than 80 or 85%, I believe, is not touched by tariffs from the U.S. So for the economy as a whole, that's good news, but this leads to tough choices for the Prime Minister and the Carney government about how they move forward with these trade talks, because right now they're looking at that steel and aluminum deal, but you've got the BC forestry sector kind of ticked off right now, saying we feel like we're being ignored, and there's a summit in BC today to try and address that. But then you also have these Chinese tariffs. China wants the electric vehicle tariffs taken off, but our EV tariffs are in line with the U.S. So if we got rid of those to try and get a deal on seafood and canola, are we then going to tick off Trump even more and potentially put more of our economy at risk as a result? So it's a delicate balancing act, and it's going to be a tough one for them to figure out, but that's the government and that's their job, and we'll see how they handle it.
Got a new pair of shoes for tomorrow?
Yeah, the finance minister got a new pair of shoes. He actually went to a boot company in Quebec, not far from Quebec City. They made him dress shoes, though. He's not going in with cowboy boots, but those were cowboy boots is what they specialize in.
Would have been better if it was cowboy boots, wouldn't it? It'd look pretty cool.
It would be interesting, yeah. But I think his point was that these are made in Canada boots, made for Canadians by Canadians. That signals what this budget is going to be all about, and signals to the world that Canada is strong. So we'll see what the budget says tomorrow and whether it backs up those claims.
Go buy yourself a pair of new shoes, Cormac.
I will indeed.
Thanks, brother.
Talk to you later, Dan.
That is Cormac MacSweeney, our eyes on Parliament Hill. We're going to stop, take a break. When we come back, exploring how pharmacists can help to bridge Canada's family doctor shortage. Welcome back. Dan Olstrand here. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We've talked about the doctor shortage here in Nova Scotia an awful lot, and put a focus a couple of months back on pharmacies and some of the things that they can do to keep you out of the ER. You can get some services done there. Now I read that an international team led by Dalhousie University's Faculty of Health researcher is investigating how pharmacists can help close the care gap for millions of Canadians struggling to find a family doctor, and what that expanded role means for both patients and pharmacists. Backed by a $719,000 grant from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, the Care Mapper RX, Care Map RX, it should be, a study examines how empowering pharmacists to prescribe medications could transform access to primary care, improve patient outcomes, and strengthen the health care system across the country. Very pleased to welcome to the show to give us a little bit of a perspective on this, Associate Professor at Dalhousie's College of Pharmacy. That's Dr. Jennifer Isenor. Doctor, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. We've had a number of segments here on this program, kind of focusing on the work that the pharmacies in Nova Scotia are now able to do because of legislation. Is this build on that, or is this we're using this as kind of a model for the rest of the company or country? How does that work?
So we're building on some of the other work that's been done. So we do already have the scope of practice in place, but it's different between each province and territory. And so we want to look at differences in how the scope has been implemented and the actual scope of prescribing that pharmacists have in each of the different jurisdictions. So we're going to study Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Alberta and do some comparisons to see what works the best to actually improve patient experiences and outcomes.
It certainly can help with wait times, too, if pharmacists are able to prescribe certain meds, correct?
Absolutely. And we have found that with some of the early work as well, that it can decrease walk-in clinic and emergency department visits for conditions and situations in which pharmacists can actually manage the medications.
Would we look at an expanded role in this field, or are we going to look to optimize what they are already able to do?
With this, we are looking at the optimal approach to the implementation and how we can optimize their workload. So we will be talking to pharmacists with this work as well to make sure we're doing it within their capabilities, because they are getting a lot added into their practice, which is great, but we need to make sure we're doing it in a way that's sustainable for them as well as for patients in the healthcare system.
When pharmacists are trained and say at Dalhousie University, are they trained in prescribing medications like this, or is this additional training that's needed?
They are trained for most of the conditions in which they can prescribe within Nova Scotia. There's a few conditions that are being tested in the primary care clinics, the pharmacist-led primary care clinics, where there is some extra training involved, like for strep throat and otitis media. So at this point, those would have to be added in to a curriculum.
How long is the study underway for?
So this is a 4-year study. And we just are starting right now, so we're going to start diving into it now. But we'll have 4 years to look at all these different aspects.
And at the end of it, what's the goal? What's the outcome of this study?
So we really, again, want to look at the optimal way to have our pharmacists involved in primary care prescribing and potentially have that change across the country. And we do have an international team, as you said. So we are looking at helping other countries move forward as well with optimizing the scope, because we are further ahead than most countries with our pharmacist prescribing in Canada.
You hear the word collaborative care a lot these days. This is part and parcel to that.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is, because pharmacists do work with other prescribers like family physicians and nurse practitioners, and that's some of their actual role within prescribing is a physician or nurse practitioner diagnoses a condition, and then the pharmacist can manage the medications for that condition. So
everybody would kind of work in conjunction with one another.
Absolutely, and that's one of the goals, to see how we can look at that better as well, if we can improve that collaboration piece. Dr. Isenor, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for having me today.
That is Dr. Jennifer Isenor from Dalhousie. It's an interesting study, and it's interesting that Nova Scotia is already doing a lot of this stuff, and our system, along with that in Ontario and in Alberta, could be the sort of blueprint for this to be rolled out for the rest of the country and for other countries around the world. We are going to stop and take another break here on the program. When we come back, a conversation with our good friend from Esprit de Corps Magazine, Scott Taylor. You've been watching some of this stuff happening between the United States and Venezuela, correct? Could Canada get dragged into this? We'll find out when we have a conversation with Mr. Taylor. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. It's even in the headlines today. The President of the United States doing another interview with somebody and saying that he's not keen that the United States goes to war with Venezuela, but that Nicolas Maduro's days are numbered. So they're not afraid to, I don't know, institute regime change. And the interesting sort of dynamic with this whole thing is, and we've seen the videos, we've seen the news stories about blowing up these narco-terrorists, as the United States president calls them. Some suggest they were fishermen. That all being said, is that Canada has a contribution to some of the naval contingent that's down there. We talk about Op Carib here in Halifax an awful lot. So by extension, should this be deemed to be out of bounds? Does that bring Canada in? Or if there is a war, does that roll Canada into this? Lots of questions. And very pleased to have our next guest from Esprit de Corps Magazine. That's Scott Taylor. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. That's the real conundrum here for the Canadian military, isn't it? Our involvement with Operation Carib.
Well, I mean, doing drug interdiction in the Caribbean is, it's mutually supporting for both the U.S. and for Canada to be doing that. And that's what they were doing up until Trump got his second term, where they would actually prosecute people who were trying to bring drugs into the States. And now that they're just murdering them, we got to take a long, hard look at whether we want to be associated with that, because, to date, I think the number is 67 people they presume killed. A couple of the survivors were then turned over back into their own countries and not even prosecuted by the U.S. And then no evidence has been produced to prove that there even was narcotics on these boats. But if Canada is in conjunction with them, we're going to be tarred with the same brush. And if there's an escalation into an actual some form of war and regime change in Venezuela, then do we really want to be associated with that as well?
Right, and the Canadian Navy, Royal Canadian Navy, has been involved in that operation for some time. We see the ships here leave all the time.
Yeah, and they've announced. It's been a success story in the amount of tonnage that they've seized, and they do work very closely. U.S. Coast Guard officials are on board our ships, and they work in conjunction with the Aurora aircraft as well. So it's a fairly major contribution. But as I said, now that it's moved into a different phase, particularly down around off the coast of South America, and just by simply labeling people narco-terrorists, precluding them from having any kind of due process and executing them, isn't something which any state should be engaged in. It's and those boats, if you look at the photographs of them, in every case they're open boats. none of them are going to make 1,000 nautical mile journey to the shores of the U.S. So they may be jump off, or they may be taking them to large. I mean, I don't know what the process is, but the fact is, people on those boats are not actually going to ever end up setting foot on American soil with their cargo.
The Canadian military, in your piece that you wrote on this, Scott, trying to distance themselves from the American involvement, but I think we can see how that line can get blurred, right?
Well, if you're on the same stakeout operation as a fellow cop, and that guy goes out on a shooting spree, maybe it's time to pack up and make sure we're not part of it, because this is, by extension, if we are putting their personnel on our ships, etc., and they are engaging in this sort of rogue activity, which, you've got the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and Donald Trump, simply labeling these people as unlawful combatants, or whatever it is the term, that means that they don't get to have any kind of due process. And again, two of the ships that were taken out were in the Pacific, which Venezuela doesn't have a coastline on the Pacific. They had to be from Colombia or somewhere else. So this isn't limited to purely a war against Maduro in Venezuela. And obviously they've made comments now, they've escalated that they want him gone, his days are numbered. But we in Canada, we've been talking about that. It was Chrystia Freeland was the head of the Lima group that we named a guy named Guaido as the president that we recognized. And that, of course, that was like probably 10 years ago. And he even had an embassy here in Ottawa that we provided for that. And, of course, there was no actual power to the man. And he has now since been disassociated completely with Venezuelan politics. But, that was a huge bumble on our part. We took the lead role in that. But I don't think we want to be taking that again. We saw what happened in Libya when we did regime change without any kind of follow-up occupation. It's still an anarchy-ridden nation to this day.
Scott, is there anything that the UN or NATO can do to try and calm the waters with Trump on this? Because it kind of brings all of them into it too, doesn't it?
It does, and it seems it's showing them to be powerless. And this whole thing where everybody just seems to kowtow and fear what Donald Trump might do next. And anybody at all who chastises him in the slightest, as we saw with those ads from Rob Ford, that it's going to be, going to get worse. He's going to, berate you and do whatever. So I think in this case, Canada should put them on notice that if any of this continues, that we will end our contribution to Operation Carib with good reason.
Scott, the federal budget drops tomorrow. There's been obviously indication that Canada is getting ready to spend up to that 2% GDP commitment. What are you expecting to see in the budget tomorrow, defense-wise?
Well, they're also talking about it going to 5% by 2032. That's going to be a huge amount of our budget. There are all kinds of things. The thing is, the military needs everything. This is the problem. It needs to refurbish their fighter jets. We need to refurbish the submarines. Everything needs to be done, and that's the problem. We've got to do it all at once. And the personnel, the shortage of personnel is the real problem right now. So I saw something the other day that they're looking at increasing the reserves up to 400,000 personnel, which would certainly spend a big chunk of money, but I don't know where they're going to find the willing recruits to do that right now. So it's probably in the 40-plus years I've been associated with the Canadian military, this is the darkest chapter I've ever seen, and that's purely for the reason that they just don't have the sufficient number of personnel to even kind of grow themselves out of the situation that they're in right now.
Yeah, I agree. I was around during force reduction, so that was a dark time to begin.
They used to pay people to leave. Man, they must be kicking themselves now.
Yeah, no doubt.
Trained personnel paid to leave, and now they're like they can't get them in. So, yeah, different times. And that was like our military has shrunk. I did an article not that long ago that if you look at it based on the number of people in our population, it used to be the representation was far greater than what it is now. It's just not something an occupation which people are choosing to take on, and young people.
It's funny. I was home a month or so ago and at a reunion and with one of the reserve units that I started my career with, and we used to be able to put 150 people on the parade square for an event, and I was speaking with the company sergeant major when I was there, and they're lucky to get 25 now.
Yeah, that's a sad state of affairs, and that's again, it's the same manpower pool, which many of the reservists are doing Class B or Class C call-ups as full-time soldiers to backstop the losses that we've had. So it's like we've already eating our seat potatoes, if you will. I mean, it's hard to get people in through the door, and then the training is the problem, not getting people to volunteer. They need trainers because they're already on operational duty. It's impossible to do double tasking.
Scott, this submarine thing, we've seen the Prime Minister crawling in and out of these submarines. Is this just a photo op? Is this a feel-good story for him?
I think there's genuine support for the fact that they want to get this thing done and done quickly. That's they need to show a win in the win column. They got to do something. So that the rumor here in Ottawa, and everyone's expecting them to make a decision on the two last choices, the German submarine or the Korean submarine, before the end of this fiscal year, which in terms of Canadian procurement is lightning speed, something that would have been at least another 2 or 3 years before they even made a decision on a competition. So it's something which they are seeking eagerly to push forward.
Is one better than the other?
One is if you want to get them sooner than later, that would be the Korean submarine, and then it's our whole idea of being part of the European, moving away from just our pure reliance upon the U.S. So it's like, where do we take our bag of goodies? Do we invest in getting good submarines quickly, or do we look at trying to secure longer-term relationships with our European partners? Housing,
Scott, has been deemed as one of these issues with the military, and it doesn't have to look very far out of our window to look over at Stadacona and Windsor Park, and this is going to be. Are we going to see married quarters and barracks built?
Well, one would hope so. It's just such a logical choice. I mean, this was something back when in 2008 with the financial crisis, it was the NDP that proposed investing across the country in military housing to upgrade the housing, at the same time pour money into construction companies all across, so it would be localized. It makes perfect sense. And why we have people who are, still sofa surfing in Halifax and working as a professional member of the armed forces is crazy. You got to take care of your people, and if you do that, then right now with the crisis across the country, you would get people joining for the forces if they knew they would have affordable housing for the foreseeable future. Affordable and livable. That's the other part.
Well, yeah, and it was funny that they came out with that report about the deplorable conditions that the single quarters and the married quarters were in. That's nothing new. That was my time too.
Oh yeah, they invested post World War II in all those little tiny PMQs on all the bases, and that was the standard. And then they just let that slide away. I mean, it's just why they wouldn't have been having a continual reinvestment in that, knowing that the one thing you can figure is you're going to always have personnel at the military, and they're always going to need somewhere to live. So that's something which they certainly dropped the ball on many decades ago.
Last question. Outside of the north, are we going to see any new bases in this procurement thing?
I think they're definitely going to invest in the north, and that's long overdue. And in terms of opening things up and investing in infrastructure up in the north, and then calling it defense spending, because that's what it would be. I mean, there's all kinds of vital minerals that aren't being mined at the moment because it's too inaccessible. But if it's part of our defense posture, I think that would be something which we could certainly put that towards our 2% or eventual 5%.
Scott, appreciate your time, sir.
Always a pleasure. Take care.
That is Scott Taylor from Esprit de Corps Magazine. Time to stop and take our last break here on the program. When we come back, the brand new president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in a minute. Welcome back. I'm Dan Alstrand here on a Monday afternoon. For the first time in its 53-year history, the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour has elected women in its top 2 positions. One of those positions is the position of president, and that is now Melissa Marsman, who joins me on the phone this afternoon. Melissa, congratulations.
Thank you, Dan.
This is groundbreaking. It's 53 years to that should have happened much earlier.
Yes, it should have, but I'm glad that it happened now.
Tell me a little bit about the labor movement here in Nova Scotia. We hear about it an awful lot. We know that, and usually only when there's a labor disruption. But is it alive and well in Nova Scotia?
It is alive and well. We're having a bit of struggles with our collective bargaining. As you know, there's some folks that are out on strike. Some folks have been locked out. And I think there's been a disconnect somewhere between employers and unions when it comes to collective bargaining, but hopefully we'll get that fixed sooner rather than later.
Right, and it's not just Nova Scotia. There's labor strife right across the country.
There is. I mean, we see what's going on with Alberta with their right to strike and being sent teachers being sent back to the classrooms. So hopefully we don't see that in Nova Scotia. But yeah, it is everywhere in the country.
A lot of the strife in this province is directed at the province, and I'm thinking of long-term care workers, and the list goes on and on and on. What are you hearing from them?
Well, I haven't really had many talks right yet with long care workers, but I know and home support workers that if they need to go on strike, that they will. Employers also need to understand these are the folks that are going into homes and looking after our elder and our people that are sick. And these folks need to be paid what they're worth.
Melissa, the federal budget's coming out tomorrow. I had a conversation with our Parliament Hill reporter just after lunch today, who said that chances are there's going to be or will be some significant cuts to the public service. What are you hoping to see out of the budget tomorrow?
Well, I'm hoping to see that they invest and create jobs in Nova Scotia. They put people first, and they invest in good union jobs, Canadian procurement, and keep jobs in Canada. That's what I'm hoping to see. And I think a lot of the labor movement is also. For
sure. Melissa, any concern about the potential cut coming to the public service?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've not been in talks with those folks lately, but yeah, there are some. We're scared of that. We're hoping that it doesn't come to that, but yeah, I mean, we see what's happening down in the States, so we're kind of hoping that it doesn't get that far here in Canada, but you never know. We'll find out tomorrow, won't we?
We absolutely will. Melissa, I know you're busy. I appreciate your time this morning. I'm sure we'll talk again.
I'm pretty sure we will. Thank you.
Have a great day. That's
okay.
Melissa Marsman, the brand new president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour, of course, replacing Danny Kavanagh, who was the president of that organization for a decade after spending 35 years in the organized labor movement. So if Danny's listening out there today, a longtime friend of this show, and we wish him the very best as he moves on to the next chapter in his life. Got a couple of minutes here. A couple of emails I'd like to pass along from our discussion earlier today on the open hour. It says, hey, Dan, I called earlier and quoted the councillor on no free ride. A subsequent caller spoke to you about immigration numbers. At one point you said something to the effect that a job isn't a given right. I said it was a birthright. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I wanted to counter that. Ponder the following. If housing is considered a human right by the UN, wouldn't the next logical step be a job should be a right also? For your consideration after that interesting discussion, and that comes to us from Gary. Gary, jobs aren't a birthright. And sometimes I think that we think they are, and they're not. Maybe something down the lines. I don't know. How does that moves an awful lot closer to out of the capitalist world and into another form of governing, isn't it? Anyway, appreciate the calls. Let's see, where else am I here? There we go. This one comes to me from Dan. He said, I have to agree with Nelson. It's a race to the bottom with immigration. He nailed it on why they can afford to take the lowest pay for jobs happily. They live 2 to a room, 6 or 8 to a house, and work multiple jobs 6 to 7 days a week. He writes that you're out to lunch thinking low standard of life immigrants aren't the problem. It's the higher standard from where they come from, but low standards to Canadians. You don't see Germans, English, or Chinese coming to Canada and live in conditions like that. That comes to us from Dan. Oh, how we forget. 1, maybe 2 generations back, when we had families of 6 and 8 living in 2-bedroom houses. Students are doing it too, right? Living multiple people in an apartment. I understand where you're coming from, Dan, but I will say it again. I don't think that immigration is a birthright. And I think that it's something that we've been talking about here for a long time, and when times get tough, we tend to lash out at immigration. We lash out at those kind of things, and I would suggest not fairly most of the time. Tomorrow on the program, we'll have obviously another open hour, and I'm looking forward to your conversation on that. I can also tell you that we're going to have Alan Doyle join the show. I know that Vanessa's pretty excited about that. And so am I. The musician and now author has a new book out. It's called The Smiling Land, and Alan will be stopping by as part of the first hour of the program. I hope that you can join us as well. Tomorrow is Budget Day, folks. The budget won't drop until after our show's over, so we won't be able to discuss the inner details unless they get leaked, which they likely will. And we will. Franco Terrazzano will be joining us from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation to give us his thoughts before the document drops. And then, of course, Wednesday we'll have some reaction to that and a special guest on Wednesday. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's going to be fun. Thank you to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass. As always, she does a fantastic job keeping things rolling here on the program. Thank you very much to all of our guests for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us and to impart their knowledge. And I truly mean this, folks. Thank you to all of you who took time out of your busy days to dial the numbers and join the conversation. As I said during the open hour, and I'm going to say probably 10,000 more times, that you and I may not agree on everything, but we will give you the opportunity to make that discussion and have that discussion. And we will continue to do that because, as I mentioned earlier, open line radio is the last bastion of democracy. It's an opportunity for people to get out there and get those opinions heard. Not a lot of places to do that anymore, other than social media, but people just block you, right? I look forward to our calls tomorrow. Maybe we carry on the conversation about immigration. Maybe we talk about the federal budget. Maybe we talk about something else. It always astounds me that the topics that come up, and they're usually led by you. And that's the beauty of open line radio. Until then, everybody, enjoy the sunshine. I think it might be one of the only days that we're going to get to see a whole lot of it this week. More rain is on the way. Good news for some as your wells are dry and you're on water restrictions. Let's hope there's enough out there. Until then, everybody, make sure that you get out there and enjoy Nova Scotia. We're so lucky to live here. Be well and be kind to one another.